I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, arrival in France. The Holy Father begins his two-day visit to Marseille. We have a report and reaction. Calm before the storm. It's quiet on the Hill as lawmakers prepare for a fast-approaching government shutdown. We have the latest. Side effects included. We dive into the medical dangers of a widely used drug. And cool to be Catholic. A young woman shares how she balances her faith and studies. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Maurice and Companions. Our top story tonight, a government shutdown is fast approaching. Lawmakers have 8 days to pass a short-term fix. First, Capitol Hill is rocked by the news of federal indictment charges against New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, his wife, and several business associates. For the latest, let's check in with Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales. Eric?
Well, good evening, Tracy. Yes, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, is actually named in the indictment on a bribery plot. He, his wife, along with several business associates were all named in the indictment. Now, earlier today, federal prosecutors laid out their case.
The indictment alleges that through that relationship, the senator and his wife accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of bribes in exchange for Senator Menendez using his power and influence to protect and to enrich those businessmen and to benefit the government of Egypt.
Prosecutors allege the bribes included gold bars, nearly $500,000 in cash, home mortgage payments, and even a luxury vehicle, all of which were recovered at the Menendez family home. This is the second set of corruption charges levied against Menendez by the Justice Department in the past decade. The senator issued a statement saying in part, quote, "The excesses of these prosecutors is apparent. They have misrepresented the normal work of a congressional office. The facts are not as presented." Menendez expects to appear in court on Wednesday. Meanwhile, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says progress is being made with several conservative Republicans who want major spending cuts before signing on to a continuing resolution to keep the government open.
We got rules going to go in today. We got members working, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward on Tuesday to pass these bills.
A shutdown will take place October 1st, which would affect millions. The federal workforce, including the military, wouldn't get paid. The nation's credit rating could be affected, and attractions like national parks will be closed.
Speaker McCarthy needs to stop being led around by the nose by the far-right MAGA crowd and put something bipartisan before the House. I'm confident here in the Senate we will have a bipartisan product.
No, I'm not a fan of government shutdowns. I've seen a few of them over the years. They never have produced a policy change, and they've always been a loser for Republicans.
We do want to let you know that members of the Problem Solvers Caucus are currently working on their own bill to prevent a government shutdown. It's a bipartisan group made up of about 64 lawmakers. Also, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is allowing the Senate to work on a spending gap bill for next week when they come back into Congress. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
At a Rose Garden event today, President Joe Biden announced the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Leading that office, Vice President Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor and state attorney general. However, whether the new office will save lives remains to be seen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
Tracy, I want to start out with a grim statistic. In the U.S. in 2023 to date, there have been at least 35 mass killings, 171 people dead. That's according to an Associated Press report. The new White House office will try to stop increasing violence, which the administration says has ravaged communities across the country.
With members of law enforcement, advocacy groups, and the families and survivors of mass shootings looking on, President Joe Biden addresses the ongoing scourge of gun violence in America.
Look, folks, shootings are the ultimate superstorm, ripping through communities.
The new office fulfills a key demand of gun safety activists who banded together as a coalition to endorse Biden for president.
I determined to send a clear message about how important this issue is to me and to the country.
Vice President Kamala Harris already leads the administration's pro-abortion push. Today she addressed her new role.
We owe it to them and to those living in fear to act without delay. And on this issue, we do not have a moment to spare, nor a life to spare.
Before the Rose Garden event, U.S. Representative Lucy McBath of Georgia, who lost her 17-year-old son in a deadly shooting back in 2012, joined the afternoon press briefing telling reporters,
gun violence has no boundaries. From the suburbs to the cities to rural America, over 100 families a day are living their worst nightmare.
While lawmakers on Capitol Hill disagree on how to reduce gun violence, last summer the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops wrote a letter to Congress saying in part, bipartisanship is never more important than when it is required to protect life and end the culture of death.
Separately tonight, the UAW has expanded its strike against major automakers, walking out of 38 General Motors and Stellantis parts distribution centers in 20 states today. President Biden has said record corporation profits should mean record contracts for union workers. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
The surge of migrants continues at the U.S. southern border. Homeland Security is sending 800 military troops, adding to the 2,500 National Guard members already in place. 9,000 migrants arrived in one part of Texas just this week. It prompted authorities to close several border crossings. The Biden administration has announced measures trying to address the influx. They include temporary legal status and work permits for nearly 500,000 Venezuelans. Turning now to news from the Vatican, Pope Francis has arrived in Marseille, France. While there, he will close the Mediterranean meetings, a gathering of bishops and young people from across the region with a focus on migration. The Holy Father arrived this afternoon in southern France. He is seeking to use the visit to promote fraternity among different groups. It is the 44th apostolic trip for Pope Francis. In his first remarks upon arriving, the Holy Father blasted the indifference that greets migrants who are seeking a better life. He also led a moment of silence and prayer. It was dedicated to those sailors and migrants who've been lost at sea. He was surrounded by faith leaders in the port city in southern France. During his two-day trip, the Holy Father also will celebrate Mass before an expected 50,000 people. The crowd is likely to include President Emmanuel Macron. Before leaving for France, the Holy Father met with the Ukrainian ambassador to the Holy See. Andrei Yurish brought the Holy Father a teddy bear that was taken from a house in Ukraine hit by a rocket earlier this year. Pope Francis gave the ambassador a rosary and said he is continuing to pray for a peaceful end to the war in Ukraine. Pope Francis also had recently met with Russia's ambassador to the Holy See. The Vatican has shared results of an internal sexual abuse probe into a former bishop in Australia with local police. There are reports the Holy See discovered that former Bishop Christopher Saunders likely sexually assaulted 4 Indigenous youths. Bishop Saunders denies the allegations. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including health hazard, a closer look at a recent study on a widely used drug, and an update on a woman arrested twice for praying in front of an abortion clinic. A recent study finds marijuana use can lead to widespread health issues, including high rates of depression, poor sleep quality, addiction, and for pregnant women, it can cause harm to their babies in the womb. The Daily Mail recently examined several medical studies into marijuana use in Denmark. Researchers found someone with cannabis use disorder was 4 times more likely to be diagnosed as bipolar. Elsewhere, there have been many anecdotal reports of high-potency marijuana vapes causing psychotic breaks and suicidal thoughts. Marijuana is legal for recreational use in 21 U.S. states and the District of Columbia. We go now to Jim Wahlberg, Vice President of Community Engagement and Global Goodwill at Evoke Wellness Drug and Alcohol Rehab. Jim, great to have you on again. A lot to delve into here, but first, I want to get your reaction to the findings of this study. And why do you think more really isn't being said about the negative impact to one's health when it comes to excessive marijuana use?
Well, I have to say that I agree with the study, and I've seen similar results. Yeah, I mean, the reasoning behind people denying the study is simple. It's money. It's always money. It's greed. Big tobacco is fully invested in the marijuana business now. And I love to say that we can trust them. They didn't try to kill us all already. So, yeah, the wrong people are behind this. The wrong people are pushing this. And I think there's a lot of people that are misinformed when they are encouraging people to vote for legalized marijuana. They're misinformed, and they need to get informed.
Yeah, and it's often been said that marijuana is a gateway drug, and you work with those trying to overcome addiction. Have you heard stories from folks who say, they started out experimenting with pot and then moved into harder drugs?
Well, not only have I experienced that with our patients at Evoke Wellness, but I experienced it myself. I like to say that not everybody that smokes marijuana is going to end up with a needle in their arm, but 9 out of 10 people that you talk to that are shooting drugs or using hardcore drugs, 9 out of 10 of them will tell you that they started with marijuana.
Jim, what do you think this says to our young people? There are a lot of teenagers out there now who think, well, marijuana is legal and people use it for medicinal reasons, so it must be safe.
Yeah, that's part of the big lie, right? It's part of the big lie that, they're also trying to convince us, the people in the marijuana business, the industry, that, they're going to keep it away from children. They're going to keep children safe from it until they're legally old enough to use it, when we know for a fact that they're after our children, right? Because they're the youngest customers, and the goal of the marijuana companies is to create repeat customers.
Yeah, and it makes it so hard for parents. I mean, do you have any advice for parents when talking to their kids about drugs?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that young people seem to be very engaged in a lot of issues these days, right? They are active politically, if you will. And I think if you explain it to them from the perspective of that this is a conspiracy against them, right? That this is all about, the powers that be trying to get money from them and really to control them. I mean, it's sad that everybody now thinks that they need to be on something to stabilize their mood, to change their mood, to make them feel different, to make them feel better. I don't ever want to try to sound like I don't think there are people out there that have very great difficulties, right? But marijuana is not the solution to their difficulties. It's not the solution to anybody's difficulty.
Yeah, and so much of it is glamorized right now. We see a lot of that on social media as well. I'm curious, has there been any pushback? I mean, any groups speaking out against the legalization of marijuana? And if so, are they making any inroads? What have you heard?
Yeah, I mean, in Ohio, where it's issue 2 on the ballot this year, the Police Benevolent Association is against it. The Children's Hospital Association is against it. I mean, most of the people that matter are against this, right? Because they know that it's going to end up in the hands of kids. And when it ends up in the hands of kids, you have these young people that become fully addicted. The other thing that I like to mention is that people that are my age, my generation, I'm 58 years old. There has been marijuana from my entire life. And I feel as though people that are my age that are not informed are voting to legalize something that doesn't exist anymore. The marijuana that they smoked as young teenagers or whenever they smoked in the 70s, that marijuana doesn't exist anymore. What they're selling now is chemically and genetically altered. You walk into a marijuana store, there's 500 different types of marijuana.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. Jim, we're almost out of time, but I do want to talk about this. I know that you yourself struggled with addiction at one point. Can you talk to us about that, and also how your Catholic faith helped to pull you through it?
So, I struggled with addiction. I started first with cigarettes, then on to alcohol, then to marijuana, and then I jumped from marijuana to much harder drugs. I smoked marijuana against my own permission, if that makes sense to you. I didn't necessarily like the effects, but I became addicted to it. I needed it. I needed something to make me feel different than the way I felt. And so, how my Catholic faith helped me. It didn't just help me, it saved me. My difficulties spiraled out of control. I ended up in prison. And a Catholic priest approached me and offered me a job in the chapel and ultimately introduced me to Mother Teresa and, and prepared me to make my confirmation at 22 years old in state prison. And so my faith was the catalyst. It was the key to me believing the things that I was learning in different groups, 12-step groups. I wasn't connecting for me until I was able to reconnect with my faith and with Christ.
It made such a difference. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We really appreciate it. God bless you, and God bless your work, my friend.
God bless you, and thank you very much for having me, and I hope to see you again soon.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, an apology from police. New developments in the case of a pro-lifer in the UK arrested for silently praying outside of an abortion business. Plus, how one college student shines the light of Christ on her college campus. Police in the UK have decided not to bring charges against a Catholic pro-lifer arrested twice for silently praying outside of an abortion clinic. West Midlands police issued an apology for taking so long to reach their decision. Isabel Von Spruce was arrested for silently praying in a, quote, buffer zone outside the abortion business. She says that she is pleased by the police decision, but is considering her own legal action against the police for their treatment of her. Well, finally tonight, this year, EWTN held the Cool to Be Catholic contest. It asked high school and college students to submit videos to celebrate and highlight main tenets of the Catholic Church, including adoration, being pro-life, and more. Winners were announced in July and were given a free trip to the EWTN family celebration last month. There, they showcased their work during the event. The winners will also have their ads played on EWTN's global broadcasts. Joining us now is the college division winner, Jesse Seraphin, a fourth-year college student at Cal State Fresno studying animation. Jesse, great to be with you today. Tell us a little bit about your video and the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, so for the video, I find that as a college student, it's really hard to be a Catholic, especially like within my within college and just like in today's society where it seems like Catholicism isn't really promoted, especially around my age group, and so it is really hard. I do feel like when I want to be a Catholic and I want to openly express that there's a lot of obstacles that are standing in my way, but it's such a blessing that I don't have to do it alone. Like in the case of my animation, I get to do that with my boyfriend as well, and I'm really thankful for that we're able to be two candles burning the one light of Christ.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm curious, Jesse, what went through your mind when you found out that you won first prize? And what was that experience like being in Birmingham?
I think it was just really, I didn't expect to win. I was just like, okay, Lord, you gave me this contest. You introduced me to this contest. I'm going to do it. And then just kind of see what happens. And then one day we were driving home from daily mass, and I got an email saying congratulations, and I'm just like, what? I'm going to Alabama. I never think I would step onto the grounds of the EWTN. And so it's amazing to meet all the people. I really felt like it's very, very friendly, I felt like it's not just like a team of workers, but also like a family. And I really felt at home going there, and I felt like it really enriched me, especially spiritually.
That's beautiful. I know you're majoring, as we mentioned before, in animation at Cal State Fresno. Yes. What's it like to be able to use your talents to represent your faith? And going forward, going out, graduating from college, getting ready for all that, are you looking to find a job where maybe you can do the same after college?
Yeah, I was always fascinated by story and being able to move people through story, and I realized art has that impact that it can move people. I mean, like, you can look at all this, like, all those traditional basilicas and cathedrals, and just, man, you just, like, I kind of witnessed people who have been moved through the arts to do something, and I realized maybe I could, through God's grace, of course, I could be one of those people.
Before I let you go, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you this, Jesse. I mean, you had mentioned sometimes it's a little bit hard on college campus, you know, to be a faithful Catholic, or a little bit challenging. What words of advice would you have maybe for other students in the same situation?
Ask the Holy Spirit to guide you, because sometimes I don't even know what to do. And I guess it's one of those times where you need to be docile to the Lord and just ask, like, Lord, what do you want me to do? What is your calling for me? How do you want me to serve you? Kind of be like, I think it was Samuel, where he was like, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And just to be open to that, and to allow God to move you to do what he calls you to do.
I think that's great advice. And Jesse, you have a very bright future. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us. And congratulations again. God bless you. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.